How's it going, trainers? The Mountain Cup is a brand new GBL Cup coming up soon. So as always, what are the best picks for this mountainous cup? Well, today we're going to be going over some of the best choices in the cup along with some sample teams to try out. So let's scale this cup and get into it. Welcome back, everyone. The Mountain Cup is a brand new Great League format where only ground, ice, rock, and steel type Pokemon are allowed. I see this as a more refined version of the Fossil Cup, which was mainly dominated by water types. But now we've got a more even roster of types, plus Swampert is actually banned for balancing purposes. So now let's talk about the best picks for each. Starting off with the ground type, we've got Diggersby. Now rock is definitely going to be big in this cup, being super effective on rock and steel type Pokemon, but Diggersby takes ground to the next level with Fire Punch in its moveset, letting it hit ice types as well. It'll definitely be one of the big stars of this cup, so now would be a great time to build one if you haven't already. But with it being one of the big Pokemon in the cup, with great coverage and solid bulk, you can bet there will be people running counters to it, which we'll talk about throughout the video, so just plan on dealing with these counters. Moving on though, we've got Whiscash. Now with Swampert banned, Whiscash obviously takes its spot as the premier Mud Boy for the cup. You know it well. High stamina, spammy with Mud Bomb, with Blizzard for a stronger nuke move. It's just an all-around good ground Pokemon for the cup, but if you're itching for something that plays closer to Swampert, there is always Marsh Stomp to use. Next up, we've got Gliscor, who's kind of 50-50 in this cup. Wing Attack and Night Slash is a great spammy combo that can boost your attack and make Gliscor even more deadly. And obviously Earthquake is great, but it's far from untouchable with water and ice type moves being prevalent. Plus, with Earthquake being its only real good coverage against rock types, it's still pretty vulnerable. But I think one of the big positives to Gliscor is how well it walls Diggersby, so it's worth noting for that alone. And one more ground type to mention is Torterra, who better be good with those big mountains on its back. But thankfully, it is. Razorleaf is quite the force in this cup, letting Torterra tear through most ground, rock, and water types. Ice and Steel, though, are obviously the types of concern, so I'd recommend pairing it with a Pokemon that can handle those types. But definitely don't underestimate Torterra. Moving on to the Ice type, though, we've got the ever-popular Walrein. Now, while Walrein hasn't been quite as common since the Icicle Spear nerf, it's still quite good, and that includes this cup. Its coverage remains incredible, with it being able to handle Steel and Rock types pretty well. It's also one of the best Diggersby counters. While it takes neutral damage from all its attacks, it can still chip it down with greater pressure, using its ice moves. And next up, we have Frostlass. Now while Frostlass is a bit riskier as a frailer ice type who's weak to Steel, Rock, and Diggersby's Fire Punch, Shadow Ball hits everything in the meta for powerful neutral damage, except for Diggersby. But you can still use Avalanche on it. While I won't undermine bulkier ice types of this cup, I do think Frostlass will perform very well if you give it 2 good bodyguards. And of course, there's several other ice types for this cup that we didn't mention. They're pretty solid. Now for rock types, there's fewer good choices that I'd recommend. There's some Pokemon that you can make work like Regirock or Sudowoodo, or even Relicanth if you're really feeling spicy, but it's the cup normie Cradily who I'd recommend most for a rock type. Cradely's bulky stats definitely make up for its more average typing, and Rock and Grass will provide great coverage against everything that isn't Steel. But yes, if you do run Cradily, plan on pairing it with counters to Steel types like Whiscash and Diggersby. And lastly, we have Steel types, and as you may imagine, there's a lot. First, we've got Escavalier, who really does well with its versatile moveset. It's one of the few counter users in this cup, which lets it hit hard against Diggersby and most ice, rock, and steel types, so that's impressive. But then, Drill Run gives it an additional strong ground move for coverage, and Megahorn is there for stronger stab damage. The big weakness for it is Diggersby, specifically its Fire Punch, but you'll still be able to do some good damage with counter before fainting, and a shield advantage can put Escavalier on top, so it's a very solid choice when used right. And one more counter user is Lucario, who's frailer but hits harder. It holds the widely unresisted Shadow Ball that Frostlass has. Lucario will definitely be a great offensive choice in this cup, but it can melt away to a lot of charged attacks, even unresisted ones like Frostlass's Avalanche, which cuts about half of its HP down. So be aware of that and come prepared with shields. And next up we have Ferrothorn, who works almost like a Steel-type Cradily, And while that's mostly an upgrade, it does leave Ferrothorn cripplingly weak to Diggersby's Fire Punch. You'll definitely want the strong Power Whip, but alongside that, you can either choose Thunder for harder hitting coverage or Mirror Shot for bait potential. Both are good in different ways, but my personal choice would be Thunder so you can hit Steel types. And of course, with Steel being such a good type, there's many other good choices for this type in the Mountain Cup. Though why Niantic didn't ban Registeel, I don't know. But moving on to some teams to try out, we've got Gliscor, Diggersby, and Registeel. Now Gliscor and Diggersby provide great coverage together, with their weak point being Ice types. Now Diggersby can take on these Ice types sometimes, but in cases of Walrein or Lapras, you'll definitely want a Registeel in there to deal with them. Now I will note that this team may be less effective if you see a lot of Whiscash and Ice types, so be aware of what you're seeing most often and change your team if necessary. For team number 2 though, we have Escavalier, Walrein, and Lapras. Now this team works pretty decent as a counter to the previous one. While Escavalier gets plowed by Gliscor and threatened by Diggersby, it does do remarkably well against the rest of the meta, while Walrein and Lapras pick up Escavalier's weaknesses, while also having some unique traits of their own. Especially in scenarios when Escavalier isn't matched directly against a Diggersby, this team will do great. And for our final team, we have Runerigus, Frostlass, and Lucario. Now this team provides exceptional coverage across the meta. All three have the devastating Shadow Ball in their moveset, doing strong neutral damage on everything except Diggersby. Now this team can work very well if you use Runerigus to set up Frostlass or Lucario to take down a Diggersby. Sand Tomb will decrease their defense, and then Frostlass and Lucario can tear up the ground in normal type. And while Fire Punch is scary, you can put up shields to keep either safe. And for Lucario especially, Power Up Punch can raise your attack to unleash something devastating on the next Pokemon after Diggersby. Overall, it's a team that's got a lot of good coverage, but you do need to play the Diggersby match well. But now that we've gone over teams, it's time to ask, what are you planning on running during the Mountain Cup? Let us know down in the comments below. And if you found this guide helpful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. We hope you'll stay tuned for our upcoming guides, including prep videos for the Spring and Sunshine Cups. Until then though, thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Take care.